Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Hahn, and I am facilitating the Monday afternoon webinar series for Corwin Press. Welcome to How Connectedness Empowers Learning. Now, I'd like to turn over the meeting Julie Margulies, Marketing Manager for Corwin Press, to introduce today's presenters.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. So we have two presenters today, Tom Whitby and Stephen Anderson. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about them. So Tom Whitby, author, speaker, blogger, and podcaster, had taught secondary English for 34 years before teaching as an adjunct professor in education. He co-founded EdChat, one of the earliest successful Twitter chats for educators. He has founded a number of educational groups on LinkedIn, including the Technology Using Professors group and the Ning site, The Educators PLN, with 19,000 educators. Additionally, Tom hosts the EdChat radio show for Band Network, which is available as free podcast. Tom's blog, My Island View, contributes articles to several education journals, and he is also an Edutopia blogger. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Whitby. Stephen Anderson is a learner, blogger, speaker, educational evangelist, author, and dad. As a former teacher and director of instructional technology, he is highly sought after for his expertise in educational technology integration and using social media for learning. He regularly travels the country talking to schools and districts about the use of social media in the classroom and how they can better serve students through technology. You can follow him on Twitter at Web20Classroom. Make sure to stick around until the end of the webinar when we'll give you a discount code for 20% off all of Tom and Stephen's books. So now I'll turn it over to Tom and Stephen.
So as we get started today, and thank you for the wonderful introduction, and you can we'll put up our information at the end as well, and you can jump back in and you can send us tweets, you can read our blogs, or you can check out our websites. So as we go through today, we would love for everybody to tweet what they're thinking, to let us know what they're what we're saying, whether it resonates with you or things like that. Of course, use the chat if you have questions for us. But if you would use the hashtag Corwin Webinars, and if you've got room on your tweet there to add in the hashtag EdChat, that would be awesome. That EdChat hashtag is the official education Twitter hashtag, recognized by Twitter for its impact on education, which is kind of cool that Tom and I and our friend Shelly kind of created that many years ago. So here here's our book, and as was mentioned, there's going to be a code at the end where you can pick this up. If you haven't read it yet, take it from us. We wrote it. That you can learn a lot from that. So you can check that out at bit.ly/relevanteducator, and again, there will be the discount code there at the end. So we always like to start out our presentation, and I think, hey, there's Tom.
Are you there?
Hey, there you are. Just telling everybody that we're going to get started here, and we like to have conversation. Normally, you and I do this, in sessions like at ISTE and FETC and places like that, but we're happy to kind of facilitate a conversation. It may be you and I doing most of the talking because everybody's going to be using the chat, but we really do encourage everybody to use that chat feature to let us know what they're thinking and things like that. And again, we've got the hashtag there on every slide, so you can add to that conversation. So, Tom, we have this question. We have this question. What does relevancy mean anyway? So what I want to do is invite everybody to kind of think of what the term relevancy means and see if you can boil it down to one word, and see if you can boil it down into one word and then post that in the chat. And while they're doing that, Tom, why don't we kind of talk about what we think relevancy means without giving too much away for later on. What do we think relevancy means?
Well, it deals with something very specific. It deals with change.
Yeah, change would. Go ahead.
Well, change would be the key, and one of the factors in our society today that's happened as a result of technology is that change happens more rapidly than it has ever happened before. and how we adapt to that change is something that's going to make us survive and compete or fall behind, if that's a clue.
Yeah, change would be my word as well. That, you know, we have to adapt to an ever-changing educational landscape. I mean, I don't think any of us would be surprised that that education has changed. Changes every day. You know, every day I walk into a school district or I walk into a classroom and I see something different or experience something different. So Jill's telling us that some of the folks on the webinar have said application importance. I definitely would agree with that. That you know, the idea of relevancy and maintaining relevancy is definitely something that is hugely important. Tom, you want to talk a little bit about, you know, where we've been and where we're going?
Well, you know, one of the things that I always bring up when it comes to relevancy is when I got my master's degree in educational technology, which was actually not that many years ago. It was around 1990. I got a degree in a master's degree in educational technology, and when I look back at this now, I realize that there's not one piece of software or hardware in existence today that I used to get that degree. So if I want to stay relevant in the area of educational technology, I have to keep up with what's going on, because when I got that degree, that just got me enough information to be relevant at that time. From the time that I got that degree, things began to change. And unless I moved along with that change, I was not going to keep up with what was going on.
All right, so let's talk about where we've been and where we're going. So we like to relate how the changing face of education, or the pace at which education is moving. We like to make that comparison to medicine, because we think there's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah, if you go back to the to the 1800s, in the 19th century, if we looking at this particular slide, looking at an operation taking place, we take note today, from what we know from even watching television, that this appears to be an operating room and somebody's being operated on, but those doctors are not garbed. The light seems to be coming from the window behind them. The guy standing at the head of the person being operated on, I would assume, is the anesthesiologist. And if you look at that little spray bottle next to him, it seems to be spraying out the anesthesia. So I don't know how long these guys are going to be able to work on this person on the operating table here. But if we go into the 20th century, we see things are a little different. We notice that germs came into this, so to protect people from germs, we added masks and caps, and they're wearing gloves, and the anesthesiologist is still at the head of the table. But things began to change, and in order to stay relevant, people had to keep up with that. And then we come into the 21st century, and this is completely different. There's more technology involved. You can see that the glasses that the doctors are wearing have special lenses on them, so they can really microscopically view what it is they're doing. Not only do they have masks, but they have complete suits on at this point, and there's a great deal of technology involved. So it's very easy to see relevance in the medical industry. And then, when we think of education, it's similar. Here we have, again, in the 1800s and the 19th century, a typical classroom. And then we move on to the 20th century, and we have another similar classroom. Notice there are the one constant that we have for all the centuries is the rows. That's one thing the educators can't seem to get away from, would be the rows. And also the main person or the teacher in the classes stand in the back of the classes for the photographs, but usually they're standing in the front of the classes for the lessons, and that's what everybody is arranged for. And,
I mean, it's really it's really plain to see that even through time, you know, how medicine embraces technology every single day, and is rapidly moving towards, you know, even automation in medicine. For some reason, the same rate of change, you know, education is moving at a much different rate in the embracing of simple types of technologies and the way that things need to change. It's like the world is passing the learning environment by.
Yeah, but you know, in fairness, if we look at that 21st century classroom on the bottom right, those kids are taking notes in notebooks, and quite honestly, there are many schools now that have gone to one-to-one laptops where kids can actually take notes on computers. Not every school has done it. Not a majority of schools have done it, but there are schools taking steps to do that, to go to a one-to-one situation within their schools. So when we think back to the 1800s, with the desks and the ink wells and the stove to warm things up, the one-room classrooms that were pretty much self-sufficient. They had to heat themselves. They had to provide their own music. They had to provide their own ink for their pens. And then we look at the model 21st century classroom. You'll see that this particular classroom is set up for a small classroom, and it's set up in a collaborative form so that there could be a great deal of collaboration. And that is the key to where it is we're going today. There's more and more collaboration involved. And why is collaboration so important to learning and innovation? It's something we have to think about. We've always had collaboration from day one, but the difference is that we don't have to be in the same space at the same time with somebody in order to collaborate with them. Technology has changed all of that. It's broken down the barriers of both time and space. We can be anywhere in the world and collaborate with someone at just about any time. And then again, you know, the importance of any idea, if it is not shared, it isn't an idea, it just becomes a passing thought. So the key to having a great idea is to share it with people. And in a room full of very smart people, the smartest person is the room itself.
And this is something that we say a lot, that and of course we didn't coin this phrase, but this is one that's been said, you know, multiple different times, that the smartest person in the room is the room. You know, one thing I like to say, alone we're smart, but together we're brilliant, and that whenever we can come together on a problem to work out a solution or to collaborate in any way, we're much smarter when we work together. And so the same is true not only for our own individual learning as adults, but for the same type of learning that students are undertaking in the classroom as well. So if we want to be better educators, if we want to be and improve education for kids overall, then we ourselves as educators need to be educated better. We need to be at the top of our game, so to say, but that means engaging in high quality professional development.
Yeah, and I often say that the day that you got your degree and got your license and then got your first job, all learning did not stop at that point. Learning continues, and that creates change. So although college prepared you for getting the job, the real learning as an educator begins with that job. You're going to find that you'll learn probably more in the first year of teaching than the 4 years of preparation that you had to teach, because it's a life experience and things that we have to continually learn to stay relevant. Now, there's an interesting question that we have for everybody out there. Is anyone aware of what andragogy is? I know everybody understands what pedagogy is because we've all been taught that as educators. We're experts in pedagogy. That's what the problem is. But what most people don't understand is what andragogy is. And by the clue that you just got from pedagogy, it should be obvious that andragogy is the practice and methods of teaching adults. Adults learn differently than children. And one of the big problems we have with all professional development is that when it comes to professional development, we turn to an educator and say, we would like you to educate these adults. So that educator goes to what they know, which is pedagogy. And they develop a lesson for adults based on teaching children. The problem is they're teaching adults, they're not teaching children. So the best way for adults to learn is to be taught in a methodology that drives their learning. And that's something that we're not seeing. This is according to Malcolm Knowles now. He came up with 6 principles of adult learning. Adults come to the table already self-directed. They know what it is that they would like to learn about. Think of your own professional development. You have a reason for getting professional development because there's something that you want to know in working with your kids. And one of the big problems we have with professional development is that people don't recognize the life experiences that educators come to professional development with. It is possible that you could have somebody presenting a professional development lesson, and people in the audience are much more experienced in that very topic than even the person presenting it, because they have life experiences as educators. And adults like to share those experiences, and they like to build on those experiences. Again, goal-oriented. Kids are not goal-oriented, but adults are. They've got specific reasons for doing specific things, especially when it comes to professional development. It also has to be relevant. When we talk about relevancy, it has to be something that they can use, something that in their mind they recognize as useful for their own job. It also has to be practical, and participants in professional development have to be respected by the people delivering it. Too often, if they feel like they're being treated like children, they will not respond to any of the professional development. So to break this down into 3 key things, we'll go to the next slide. And we find out that authentic, relevant learning is best received in respectful conversation. Adults learn best through collaboration, and the best tool for collaboration is conversation, not PowerPoint presentations. And, you know, PowerPoint presentations are also complicated by people who don't understand how to use PowerPoint presentations. By simply, you know, putting pages of text up and then reading it to the audience is not the way to do a PowerPoint presentation. And we've all sat through those time and time again. You also can't put a whole bunch of people into a room with math teachers, English teachers, science teachers, and explain things for professional development so that everybody gets it, because it just doesn't work that way. You really have to individualize things as much as possible so that it addresses the individual needs of each of those people. And then when we look at the traditional professional development, as you can see here, it's usually delivered by consultants. Consultants are high-paid people to take your watch and tell you what time it is. There are good consultants, and then there are bad consultants. So not all consultants are bad people, but again, we have to think of the andragogy, the way to deliver things to people in ways that they learn best as adults. We could also take college courses, which many of us do. And then there's the in-house. Again, this is where many of the things fall short, because if you go to in-house educators, they often fall back to, again, that pedagogy, because that's what it is they understand, and they try to present professional development the same way that they would teach their classes. And it works for some people, but most people, it's not going to really help them a whole bunch. And then the last thing is conferences, where people get to go to local, state, or national conferences. But most educators are not budgeted for that. The people who are budgeted to go to conferences are usually the administrators. Conferences, the way many teachers get to conferences is to present in those conferences. And those are usually the teachers who are pretty much the thought leaders within their schools, people who push the envelope and have things that they would like to present at national conferences or local conferences. So they don't often share that professional development with their colleagues. And again, this is what you're going to see now is a quick video that Chicago public schools spent tens of thousands of dollars for, and it's not typical of traditional professional development, but it is the way many people receive it. So if we would take a look at that now.
I use that, as I get back to the presentation, I use that recording a lot in some of the work that I do, and a lot of that I hear is folks laughing when they see that, because they think, you know, they think that that's staged, or that, you know, that didn't actually happen. That actually happened to teachers. Teachers were in professional development where that happened to them, and it's quite upsetting to one. She was talking to them about an objective that they would write on the board in the classroom that they would expect students to understand. So it was a terribly written objective anyway, because it was much too long and uncomprehensible. But two, they were basically doing call and response. This group was paid nearly 7 figures to come in and do this Common Core professional development, and this is what they provided. It was quite ineffective, and so these folks clearly didn't have an understanding of the way that adults learn. They were, you know, came back and said, "Oh, we were just modeling." Well, I wouldn't push that even on a classroom of first graders. So it's really this idea of, you know, folks sit in professional development. We've all sat in professional development that way. We've all sat in that unengaged, uninformed professional development that's lacking in any kind of substance. We've all sat in there before, so we have to change the narrative. We have to change the script on that.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I don't think I would have sat through that. I think I would have gotten up and walked out. I don't know how anybody could have put up with that.
I couldn't. I have. It's hard just to watch it for the minute that it's on, because you just want to reach out and just grab all those teachers and say, you don't have to do it this way. So fortunately for us, we have, you know, we're no longer reliant on our districts to provide us the professional development that we need. And reality is, districts can't provide us that PD. You know, we just like how many times we struggle to provide individual level of instruction to students. Districts, you know, struggle to provide individualized levels of professional development to teachers. And so, lucky for us, we live in this modern age of technology where we can reach out through the use of things like social media or ed camps or blogs or any of these other things. Even those traditional methods that Tom mentioned, there are those same traditional methods that we can find just in a different way. Look at this traditional webinar. This is not something that was even possible just a few years ago. We'll get a little bit more into that. But we have many ways now to go through the resources that we have available to us to personalize our own 21st century style professional development.
Yeah, and, you know, one of the things that technology provides us, first of all, the transparency of it all. You actually can connect with people in other schools to find out what it is they're doing anywhere in the world. and you don't have to accept answers that have been provided to you that may not have been answering your questions. If the example I use is if you go back, a few years, many schools were banning students from using the internet because they cited the laws, SIPA, FERPA, and COPA as laws that said that they had to ban the internet use from students. And we found out through contacting other people in other schools around the world that these laws were guidelines, and they did not require banning kids from using the internet. So that transparency led us to open things up more for other schools, and administrators began to see that those laws were being interpreted incorrectly, and that all that needed to be provided was a teacher to monitor these things. So the internet, for the most part, has been opened up to students to use for open sourcing. And although there are still some schools that don't allow it yet, eventually we will get there. But that's one example. And the idea that we can reach out and learn about anything that we want to learn by just connecting with people on the internet is fantastic. But the better part is that we can learn about the things that we don't even know about, because there are things going on in education that we are unaware of. And we talk about, for instance, the flipped classroom. Discussions in the connected community of educators who are using technology, discussions of the flipped classroom, for instance, went on anywhere from 6 months to a year before those same conversations began to take place in faculty meetings and faculty rooms. Because the people with ideas, the thought leaders in education, are sharing those ideas through technology and through their connections within the connected community. And once those ideas are being shared and discussed and worked on, then later it comes into the brick and mortar classrooms of the education system. So that brings us to the 8 tenets of being a relevant educator. How do we stay relevant? What is it we should be doing to be relevant in education today?
Yeah, so Tom and I wrote this book, The Relevant Educator, and in it we proposed there are these 8 things that all relevant educators do or embrace or have the mindset of, and so that's where we're going to spend the rest of our time today. So let's go through number 1. So the first thing, and what I think is the most important thing, is practices and models lifelong learning. One of the things that that Tom and I, as we travel around, we will often spend a lot of time in schools or in classrooms, and we'll see school mission statements or school vision statements. We'll see classroom vision statements, and hardly one goes by where it doesn't say we're here to develop lifelong learners. We want our students to be lifelong learners. And as teachers, we want our kids, and our students to be lifelong learners. We want to instill that value of lifelong learning within them. Rarely do we ever see, however, vision statements and mission statements that talk about the adults within those walls modeling and practicing lifelong learning. So in order to be a relevant educator, as Tom and I both talked about at the beginning, that word change is really at the heart of what relevancy is. And as some of you said, relevancy is important and things like that. That this whole notion of lifelong learning is really at the heart of what relevancy means, because when we're lifelong learning, that means we're understanding, like the flipped classroom conversation, that those folks are plugged into that conversation long before it ever hits mainstream. They're already looking at that as a methodology, perhaps to utilize in their classroom or to investigate as a possibility as a teaching method. So it's not just recognizing that change is taking place, it's modeling that for kids as well, that we need to be lifelong learners in front of our students, showing them that we're continuously learning and that we're continuously adapting and continuously honing our craft. And so it's this practicing and modeling lifelong learning that are important. Tom, you have anything to add?
No, you said it all, my friend.
So one of the things, so as we go through each of these eight tenets, we'll have different ideas, and certainly not, these, so here we talk about how social networks promote lifelong learning. Certainly social networks do a lot more of these, do more than that. They may, be able to fit into several of the other 8 areas. But just as an example, being able to plug into networks like the EDU PLN or Classroom 2.0, which is the largest teacher social network, any of these places, the English Companioning, there's social studies, there's all these different places where you can go asynchronously. So these even aren't places where you have to participate at a specific day, at a specific time, in a specific place. These are places where you can go to engage with others around specific topics. The EDU PLN has a lot of videos. There's a ton of videos on there on all different sorts of subjects. There's a lot of conversations that happen there. The same thing on Classroom 2.0. There's many groups and conversations where people are debating and discussing new ideas for the classroom, new technologies. So these are places where you can plug in, again, asynchronously. You don't even have to do it at a specific day or time, but you can plug in and you can learn from the knowledge of others. That whole notion of collaboration.
Yeah, these Ning sites, it's N-I-N-G. Ning is the name of the company that provides this. They are actual communities, and just about every subject area in education has a Ning site. There's a Ning site for social studies teachers. There's one for science teachers. I don't know how much longer they're going to be around because Ning has just increased their what they charge their annual rate for this, so it's actually doubled. It's going to be about $1,200 for a year. So as long as these things are still in existence, people should be accessing them just to make connections with other educators globally. It's just a fantastic source to do that. You start to think in terms of collegial sources. We talk about open sources, and certainly you can access the internet for websites and for papers and for journals and for many things, but the true connections that are going to help you will be developing collegial sources, people on the internet. We'll get into that a little bit more in a minute.
Tom, what's the last thing you failed at?
I once had a scuba shop where I entered into the area of retail selling, and I had a scuba shop, and what I didn't realize was that it was the wrong time. I was not being relevant. Opening up a scuba shop in the era of the internet was the dumbest thing I ever could have done, because people would come in and they would look at all the scuba equipment that I had, and then they would go on the internet and buy it cheaper. So I didn't last long, so that was my big failure, my big regret.
I tell you what, it seems like every time this question comes up, it's another issue with my home. I need to realize I'm not Bob Vila and can't fix everything in my house. So Tom, I'm on the road a lot, and so when I go home, I have a nice long honey-do list. And when I came home this last time, there was a leak underneath my sink, and so I was like, oh, I can fix that, no big deal. Go to the home center, get some pipes and things like that. After about 4.5 hours and totally just tearing up everything under my sink and nothing working and leaks. Now it was leaking twice as bad as it was before. That was when it was time for me to call in an expert and somebody who knew what they were doing. So we all fail all the time. It doesn't matter what we do in every aspect of our life. We have something where we just make a mistake and we screw up, and if we learn from that mistake and we know to do different next time, then we can turn that failure into a success. And so part of the problem that we see in many classrooms is that failure is seen as kind of the stopping point. Well, you didn't do well on this test, so you're going to just have to have the grade in the grade book that's going in there. Well, you didn't study hard enough, so that's just too bad. That failure is a natural part of the learning process. That relevant educators believe and understand that failure is actually the point at which learning begins. That if we can embrace failure and we can understand and learn from it, then we're actually doing a lot more learning than just the total regurgitation of content. That failure is where and relevant educators believe this is where learning begins. I was a teacher. I taught science. I taught middle school. I regularly, whenever I see kids at the grocery store or around town, whenever I see them, I apologize. I was a terrible teacher. I used that test as a gotcha. I used the quiz as a gotcha and left the grade in the grade book because I thought, well, they'll just learn from the fact that they didn't do well. And the problem is we didn't talk about failure. We didn't talk about why we didn't do well or what we could have done better. I didn't have that part of my own process to reflect upon that. So the more we embrace this idea of failure, it's not the promotion of failure. We're not encouraging people to fail. What we're doing is we're looking at when failure happens, that it is a natural part and process of learning. But we embrace it when it happens, learn from it, and do something different the next time.
Well,
and so Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, if we want the system to change, we have to stop punishing kids for failure. and they have to understand that failure is part of it. Failure could be, it's the best teacher there is. You fail once and you go back and do it again. And the way we handle failure has to change. So rather than punishing kids for that, once again, we have to become the mentors and guide them out of that, give them some alternatives to go to. That's one of the reasons why this project-based learning and problem-based learning is doing so well across the country now, is because kids are being given the ability to fail and how to deal with that failure. Because as adults, we will be failing all the time, and how we handle that failure will depend on what path we take from that point on. That's why I'll never open up another scuba shop.
and I will learn from your failure and not do the same. So Tom and I, we love blogging. We believe wholeheartedly in the power that blogging can have. We both use our blogs to think, and reflect. And so blogs can be a great way for educators to embrace failure and to talk through what works, what doesn't, and what we can do better. Again, it's not the only way, but it's one way that you can put that failure out there, learn from it, help others learn from it as well, and perhaps receive ideas and understanding from others as well. Tom, you want to
not just blogging as a teacher, but also having class blogs is great, and as an administrator, to blog is fantastic, because you're giving insight to your faculty as to how decisions are being made and what your educational philosophy is, so they have a better understanding of who is leading them and how to deal with things.
Now, we talked earlier about sharing and collaboration. Tom, you want to talk a little bit more here?
Yeah. Again, this is the biggest part of the connected community, is the idea that we have to share ideas. I said this before, but if you've got an idea in your head and you don't share it, it's not an idea, it's a passing thought. It's good to open up to other people to drop these ideas on them, and they will respond to it, and they will say, this is the good parts about it, and these are the bad parts about it. And then the whole idea is that you go back and you reflect on other people's comments to change things accordingly. And that's what we call collaboration. It's something that you can develop in a connected community by picking and choosing those people that you want to connect with. The idea is to use some source, some platform where you can talk with educators. We mentioned Ning sites before. That's one way to do it. You can also form, if you go to LinkedIn, for instance, you can form groups on LinkedIn. I've got about 5 education groups on LinkedIn myself. And these are ways to connect with people in education. And probably the best way and easiest way to do it is to use something called Twitter, but we'll get into that in a minute. Steve, you want to mention social bookmarking, which is another way.
Yeah, and so when we talk about collaboration, collaboration just isn't about conversation. It can be about sharing our learning with each other. And so I love social bookmarking. Use a site Digo all the time, which are my public public bookmarks. Instead of them just living in my browser, they can live online. And now with the click of a button, I can share any of those resources with anybody. So, the same can go for kids. A lot of times that would have been viewed as cheating if you're sharing your resources with others. But why spend time reinventing the wheel and have 30 kids turn in 30 of the same thing when they can use that knowledge and resources in a different way and build upon it? So this, collaboration isn't just all about conversation. It's about sharing our knowledge and sharing our resources as well.
Yeah, we mentioned blogs before. The blog has become the relevant journal of the educator. We've got thought leaders out there who are writing blogs all the time. I generally start the day off. I used to start the day off by opening up an application called Zite, Z-I-T-E, but they were bought out by an application called Flipboard, so I use Flipboard now. What that enables me to do is to pick and choose the types of blogs that I want represented in the application, and it brings these blogs in kind of like in a magazine format, so you can flip through it with your finger, and it's a very easy way to peruse education blogs. But the best part about it is once I see a blog that I like, I can actually tweet that blog out with just touching an icon, and I'm able to share that with colleagues all over the world, people who I respect as educators and who I want to collaborate with. If I see a blog that I think would interest an educator, I immediately send it out, because not everybody gets to do what I get to do because I've got time to do it. So being able to put out important blogs or interesting blogs to people just to have it come across their desktop is a great way to collaborate.
Number 4, willing to explore, question, elaborate, and advance ideas through connections with other educators. Tom, you want to briefly touch on this one?
Yeah, again, I mentioned the flipped classroom. We also had the one-to-one laptop initiative, BYOD, which was bring your own device plans. All of these ideas came up within the connected communities, people who are connected through the internet. And they were discussing these ideas online before they ever appeared in schools across the country. So the idea that you've got courage enough to put your idea out there, that's the difficult part. Knowing that people are not going to make fun of your ideas. They don't. And the best part about this is that people are judged by their ideas and not their titles, which is something that I totally respect. It doesn't matter whether or not you're a teacher, an administrator, or whatever in education. If you've got a good idea, that's what people latch onto. You're respected for the ideas that you come up with.
So we help create the hashtag EdChat, which is a weekly. It's more than just a hashtag. It's actually a weekly synchronous chat that happens at the same time, 7 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, 12 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. That has now grown into hundreds and hundreds of these educational chats that take place on Twitter every day. I mean, even today, there's 10 to 13 chats that are happening just tonight that you can take advantage of. And so there's a great calendar at bit.ly/twitterchats.edu that where you can go and you can plug in your time zone and see what chats are happening at a particular time in your time zone, and really get a sense of, hey, there's some really cool conversations that are happening. And so you can advance those ideas and engage with others and see what folks are thinking and really push the boundaries of your thinking as an educator.
And again, in these chats, you will meet up with people who you will want to follow, and you can do that on Twitter. So anybody that you find interesting or provocative or someone who is just encouraging, you can simply follow on Twitter.
So, the question we have to ask ourselves is, where do we learn on our own? Because again, as we talked about earlier, our school districts and our employers can't provide us, the targeted professional development that we need. And so the fifth and sixth tenets revolve around that idea that educators use technology and its connection to other educators to learn and teach. that we utilize the tools that we have available to us, which would be, the internet and technology, in order to engage. Anybody who's on this webinar or watching this recording understands this tenet and gets it, that you are engaging in what's still seen as a non-traditional form of professional development, that you're utilizing technology to plug in and to learn an idea or to share an idea with others in order to change your practice down the road. So we're so lucky that we live and teach and learn in this day and age, because we have so many options available to us in order to accomplish this, and most of them come at no cost. So this webinar was free to everybody. There are other webinars that take place that are free to everybody. It doesn't cost anything to participate in a Twitter chat. It doesn't cost anything to participate in a Ning site. These are free sources of professional development where you're able to take advantage of the learning that happens there. And if you're a member of a professional organization, so of an ISTE or an ASCD or an NSTA or an NCTE or any of those, subject level organizations, even they have types of professional development that you can engage in. So the point here is that you're utilizing that technology in order to seek it out and to find it.
Yeah, Steve, if you could just go back on that slide for
Yeah.
1 second. Another thing about this whole idea is that this is why it's more important to teach kids how to learn than it is to teach them what to learn. Because they will find things that they want to learn about, but teaching them how to learn should be our first most important goal. And using technology to learn is the best way moving forward that we can help them. I just recently I had to my daughter gave me a phone call and she said, "Dad, my car won't start. I think the battery's dead." So I said, "Okay, I'll be down to help you out." So I went to the garage and I grabbed the cable jumpers or jumper cables and threw them in the back of the car. And I drive an Audi and she drives a Prius. So I got down there and I opened up her hood and I opened up my hood and I looked in the car and I couldn't find a battery in either car. I had no idea where the battery was. I looked in both cars. I could not find the battery. So my daughter said, "Don't worry about it, Dad. We'll just look it up on YouTube." So she went to YouTube and she looked up battery jumping for an Audi, and then we did battery jumping for an Audi. And I found out that the batteries were placed so far into the car that there were just terminals that were supplied on the firewall that you could hook the cables up to, but you couldn't see the batteries. Back in the old days, you would just look at the positive and the negative and hook it up to the positive and negative on the other battery, but it doesn't work that way. And the whole idea that my daughter taught me to use YouTube for just about anything that I want to find was phenomenal to me, and it worked out. We actually dumped the car at that point.
So it's really, and Tom and I, we do a lot of work around helping educators understand, a personal learning network, that this is your group of people that you utilize the connections through to learn from. And it's not just digital. People make the misconception that a PLN is just digital. It's not. That face-to-face conversation is still important. That having that network of people, that's why the ed camps are so great. Going to an ed camp and meeting people face-to-face and having a face-to-face conversation is just as beneficial, and sometimes even more beneficial when you take it offline and engage in that in that way with people. Professional learning networks are used for professional development. That's what they're there for. They're not just there for making social connection. They're there to be for you to use as a learner.
And one of the things that many people say is, why do I need technology, or why do I need Twitter when I've got the people in my school? And I think that's fine. I understand that, but why would you want to limit yourself just to the people in your building when you've got a whole world of personal resources that you can go to? It just blows my mind that anybody would want to limit themselves in the amount of collegial sources that they had. I know when I was an English teacher, working with the staff of 11 other English teachers, if I wanted to do something on Shakespeare, I could easily find lessons from any of my colleagues to do that. But if I wanted to incorporate technology into that, there wasn't one person I could go to for that, because I was the one that they would come to for technology advice. So who did I have to turn to within my building? I had no one, but by using technology, I'm able to get outside of my building, outside of my county, outside of my state, outside of my country, to access more and more people who are more expert in the area than I am. So why would anyone want to limit themselves to just their building? It doesn't make sense in today's technology-driven society.
And PLNs are personal. You know, mine is going to look different from Tom's. Tom's looks different from from other people's, and mine looks, everybody's is going to look different. It's going to be what's meaningful to you. But that's the key, is to engage with the people. I tell people all the time, don't just engage with people you agree with. Engage with people who you don't agree with, and have them as a part of your network, because that's where you can get your thinking really pushed, when you have opposing ideas and have opposing viewpoints. You get it locked into that echo chamber, and it can be not that it's hard to hear the other side when you're engaged in that space. All right, we've got just a couple minutes, Tom. We've got to kind of fly through the rest of these. So, uses tools of technology to personalize professional development. So I think we've got that. Tom and I, shameless plug, we have EdChat interactive webinars as part of our EdChat series, which you can go to, which are really cool because they allow you to interact with the other participants who are there. So there's a lot of those that are coming up, which you can check out at edchatinteractive.org. Comfortable with new technology and shows a willingness to explore. So, this goes back to your point of when you got your degree, about how there isn't a piece of technology or software available today that you learned on. You've had to adapt over time and understand, the ever-changing face of technology as well.
Yeah, it's, and I think as educators, we have to understand that whatever technology or applications that we are using today that we're comfortable with, it's not going to be there tomorrow. It will change. That's what change does. It replaces what is with what will be, and usually whatever it replaces it with will be better. So you really can't settle into one specific thing. You've got to be flexible in your learning and understand that what is here today is not going to be here tomorrow.
It's true, that a lot of things in ed tech will start up and they'll be great, and then they disappear. And so, we don't make connections to technology; we make connections to people. The technology just makes it easier to facilitate that conversation. So we need to be adaptive, and again, that plays into the classroom, and that all shows that whole idea of lifelong learning, and shows kids that we can be adaptable to an ever-changing technology landscape. And then the last one, Tom, I'll let you talk a little bit about this one. They put creation over content and relevance over doctrine.
Yeah, and this comes down to teaching kids how to learn as opposed to what to learn. The whole idea of education is to get people to create. And we have to keep that in mind. If you're creating something, you're learning as you do it as well. And that's learning that will stick with you because you're actually doing it for your own purpose, and it's important to you to create it. So therefore, it makes that learning yours. The whole idea of everything that we do, the collaboration, the communication, the curation, all of this can be focused into creating something, some content. And if we can get our students to use all of those skills to create, we are successful as educators. And as educators, we have to also create things, and we have to share things. And that's the biggest part of what it is we as learners can be successful at doing.
Yeah, and I couldn't have said that better myself. So those are the 8 tenets of being a relevant educator. So, it's easy to say a lot of this stuff, but how can you really get started? So what the book really aims to do is dive deeper into those 8 tenets, and we talk about how to maintain relevancy in an ever-changing technology landscape in terms of education. It all goes back to this idea of connections and collaboration. And so here, when we get to the end, there's going to be a code you can use to get a discount on the book, but we encourage you to check it out because we go into a lot more depth on a lot of these things than we're able to over the course of the hour. So,
by the way, it's important to say at this point that you know the worst advocates for being a connected educator or connected educators
is us, right?
They tend to overwhelm you with everything that they've done and everything that you can do. You can't be scared by that, and you have to take things step by step. Simply getting a Twitter site to begin with, or a Twitter account to begin with, will help you begin to understand things, because you can then create your own sources for learning, and you will build upon that as a foundation. Believe me when I tell you, I knew very little about any of this when I started out in social media 10 years ago, and it's taken me 10 years to get to where I am now. So don't expect to have 150,000 followers on Twitter because you know everything there is about social media. It doesn't work that way. But taking it step by step at a pace that you can handle, that's comfortable for you, is the best way to do it.
Yeah, nobody's gonna, read our text and just instantly be a connected educator. Even Tom and I, it's a constant work in progress for us, and adapting and changing. And again, that all goes back to, being relevant, that we're constantly looking at new and exciting ways of doing what we do. So you can get in touch with us on Twitter. I'm at Web20 Classroom. He's at Tom Whitby. You've got our information there. I think, Jill, you want to come back and talk a little bit about how they can check us out more?
Yep. First of all, thank you all so much. I know everyone's giving a round of applause that you just can't hear because we don't have sound. That was wonderful. So they talked a little bit about the relevant educators. They also have The Educator's Guide to Creating Connections by Tom and Content Curation by Stephen. These books are all part of the Connected Educator series, and I know you can't tell us in the covers here, but these books are all just small, little, very short, easy-to-read books about technology. They're really affordable, and it's because they're small and easy to read. They cover a huge range of topics, and if you want to save 20% on them, you can use that code on the screen. It's B16AH3. That'll be good until November 7th, and that's good no matter how many copies you buy. So it'll be 20% off your whole order. If anyone else has questions, you can go ahead and use that chat feature. Just send it to all panelists. I see Jeremy send a chat there thanking you guys for all the great ideas. And if you have any questions, go ahead and stick around. But otherwise, thank you to Tom and Stephen for a great webinar. This is a part of our Monday afternoon webinar series. So we've got a few more webinars to round out the rest of the year. We've got names like Michael Fullen and Gary Howard. Lots of good stuff, and then next year we'll have a whole new round of webinars. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.